Good evening. Thank you for having me.
First of all, do you accept that China has a problem with trust? The world simply, at the moment, doesn't seem to trust China.
I don't think so. I think we have a good record. You know, China is the first country to report the virus and first to identify the pathogen, first to share genetic sequence with the WHO and many other countries at a record short time. When you say the world, I can't, agree with you. I think only a few countries that challenge and make some accusation with no ground at all.
Okay, well, let's look at why some of the world may not trust China. Let's go to the beginning. And according to your own state news agency, Dr. Zhang Xixian reported her suspicions of the virus to the authorities on December the 27th. She suspected human-to-human transmission because she treated a couple in Wuhan and then their son. But it was not until the 22nd of January, nearly 4 weeks later, that China, through the WHO, confirmed human-to-human transmission. Why was there such a delay?
That's not true. You know, we are, once Dr. Zhang, as you mentioned, Dr. Zhang Jixian reported to the local health authority on 23rd. Then 4 days later, Chinese authorities, health authorities, notified a WHO office in Beijing. That was 4 days later. Then on 3rd of January, that was 7 days later, we officially, you know, the health commission, the central government authorities for health notified officially the WHO. And you know, since this is a new virus, it's unknown to not only to the world but also to China. We have to be responsible. We have adopted a cautious approach, try our very best. So 11 days later, we identify the pathogen and share the genetic sequence without delay at all. So I think it's unfair.
Well, but the WHO
being late.
So, well, the WHO timeline says clearly that it was January the 22nd that they confirmed human-to-human transmission. And this doctor told Xinhua, your news agency, and I quote, "It is unlikely that all 3 members of a family caught the same disease at the same time unless it is an infectious disease." So on December the 27th, she knew and the authorities in Wuhan knew, but it wasn't until the 22nd that the WHO confirmed it was human-to-human transmission.
As I said, you know, it will take some process. Even so, you know, we have lost no time in informing WHO once we know there's a risk of transmission from human to human. And I have, you know, the Dr. Zhong, who is the most authority in this field. He said in the press briefing on 20th of January, earlier than your timeline, that there's a risk, high risk, that of the transmission from people to people. By that time, there's about less than 200 cases in China.
Right.
So, you know, it takes time. I think for any countries, you can't, you know, there's a certain procedure in terms of determining the infectious disease. That is the responsible way to handle this case.
Yeah, I understand that. So why was Dr. Li Wenliang, why was he arrested and silenced when he wrote on social media about his fears about the spread of the disease?
First, Li was never arrested, as some media reported, including Sky News.
Silenced and told to retract.
Yeah, he was assigned to police station. He got a reprimand because, as I said, once you have some infectious disease, the authorities, any other countries, including here in UK, you have to be careful. You have to be responsible. You do not want to create a panic. But as I said, 3 days earlier, before Liu Xiaoming, Dr. Zhang reported to the health authorities, then the local health authorities report to the central government. Then central government notified WHO. That was 4 days later, and it was 1 day after Li. So there's no cover-up, there's no so-called persecution. And Li himself, because so many things happen, and the government attach importance to this complaint and sent investigation team down to Wuhan and find out what was really going on. And he was made a martyr. He was made a hero.
Okay, let's look at another reason why the world may not trust China. Mike Pompeo, the US Secretary of State, says you failed to share information about the virus. Donald Trump says he's promising a report soon, saying there is, quotes, enormous evidence that COVID-19 began in the Wuhan laboratory. And he quotes, his quote is, my opinion is they made a mistake and they tried to cover it up. So my question is, was it a mistake and did you try to cover it up?
As I said, there's no any cover-up at all. We shared information with the WHO and the world without delay. And we notified United States from the very beginning. On the 30th of January, when we notified the WHO, we also notified the CDC of the United States. And since then, there's a daily communications, a daily briefing between the Chinese CDC and American CDC. When you said that the world, I don't think what said by United States, either their national leaders, whether top diplomat, represent the world. That's not the truth.
So it didn't come from a laboratory.
You said Donald Trump, his comment on China. Let me quote Donald Trump. On the March of 27th, after his telephone conversation with the President Xi, he said, that was just 1 month ago. He said, we learned quite a lot. And China had a very tough experience. We learned quite a lot from China. We have good communications. And they sent a lot of data from, we receive a lot of data from China. They have an early experience, and we are getting all that information. No, that was Donald Trump. Okay. It was really dependent when and where you quoted him.
Okay, now let's look at one other reason then. Let me look at another reason the world may not trust China. You're refusing to open up for a full investigation, an international investigation by scientists. If you have nothing to hide, and as you say, there's no cover-up, why not allow an international investigation of the lab and the wet market and other places, an international investigation? Why not?
When you say international organization, I think this investigation should be not politically motivated. I think, first of all, now the top priority for the international community is to fight, is to focus on fighting this virus. I happen to agree with your secretary when he said 100% of the focus should be working together to fight against this virus. Secondly, we are open, we are transparent, we have nothing to hide, we have nothing to fear. We welcome international independent review, but it has to be organized by WHO. It should be international. When you say international...
So would you agree to that? Would you agree to the WHO organizing international scientists from across the world to come into China to investigate? Would you agree to that?
Yes. Yeah, of course.
Yes.
At a proper time.
You would?
At a proper time, but not now. We certainly welcome.
Well,
the purpose is to compare notes, to summarize, to learn experience. How can we do better for future pandemic?
Well,
that's the purpose.
Doesn't it have to happen now, though?
Accuse China.
Isn't it best it happens now? With respect, Ambassador, with respect, 4.5 million people have been infected by this virus. Nearly 300,000 people have died as a result of this virus, which you concede probably came from Wuhan in your country. It is a global tragedy that has been caused here. Doesn't it need a global investigation now, as soon as possible, with world-renowned scientists?
I think scientists, experts are working even now. I think the scientists from China, scientists from the United States, from UK are working to find the origin. I think when you say, this outbreak happened in China, but China is the first to report the case. But you can't say the virus originated from China. It's a matter of science. It's up to the scientists, not for you, not for me, not for politicians.
The origin, I'm using the word origin, and is the first case was in China. It's not the first time. It happened with SARS. It's happened with COVID. It cannot be allowed to happen again.
Definitely, it cannot be happened again. But this is still unknown to many scientists, right? So you can't blame China. China is a victim. China is not a culprit of this virus. It's not a man-made virus. It's natural in origin. So we have to adopt a scientific approach. You can't have this campaign of stigmatizing, disinformation, smear against China, as some American politicians are doing.
Well, I understand. We'll just allow scientists in.
About this.
Well, allow scientists in, and they would find out the truth. Most modern, fair-minded, open, responsible countries would let international scientists in very quickly.
We are working with scientists from, international community. There's no doubt about that. But you have to separate from the political motive, so-called independent investigations. When you say the world, there's only a few countries: United States, Australia. So you name how many countries you can give me. You can give me 10 countries to call for the so-called independent investigation. I think many countries call for the global response, call for solidarity, cooperation, call for constructive, not critical. I think the theme of today is to focus on fighting this virus and save lives, instead of playing this game of blaming and scapegoating.
Why is China or Chinese-backed groups trying to steal coronavirus research, according to the intelligence agencies? They say you're hacking British and American scientists working on COVID programs. Why would you want to do that?
Where do you get these charges? Again, do you have a proof?
The FBI say, and I quote, the hackers have been observed attempting to obtain illicitly public health data.
This is not the first time that the United States made such a fabrication and a false accusation against China. Currently, I think this is not only their efforts to undermine the international collaboration on working together to find the vaccine. I think vaccine will be the final solution to the problem. And Chinese scientists working around the clock, first on their own, then engage in collaboration with the United States, even scientists from the United States, and China and the UK also working very closely. Both our top leaders, President Xi and Prime Minister Johnson, give us support to the scientists.
Or talking about a vaccine, Ambassador, talking about a vaccine, if China discovers a vaccine before other countries, do you agree to distribute it equitably and fairly along the lines advised by the Vaccine Alliance?
Yes, we certainly would like to share. We would regard this as the joint efforts of the international scientists. We should share this to enhance the global response against this virus.
So their policy...
There's no doubt about that. That's why we are engaging with other countries in collaboration on science.
So that policy...
Including here in this country.
That policy is that it goes first to those at the heart of the outbreak, wherever it is in the world, and then it goes to health workers around the world. China will agree to that, will it?
Agree to what?
Agree with the policy that is, if you come up with a vaccine, it should go first to those at the heart of an outbreak around the world, and secondly, to health workers around the world. Do you agree to that in principle?
We certainly, I think it's still early to say what's in specific term, because we haven't, made the vaccine yet, though China has been very advanced now in terms of developing the vaccine. But I said, as a principle, we'd like to share what we have achieved with other countries, either in the most needed countries or to the frontline medical workers.
Okay.
Just as what we have done to provide medical supplies to about 150 countries. I think most of these medical supplies have been used in the frontline workers, including here in UK. We are donating the most needed supplies. We help the UK government to procure ventilators. I think they are all have been put in good use.
Okay.
That is our.
Okay, now you've talked about openness. You've talked about openness. Let's just talk about that. Why have you expelled 13 American journalists from China, many of whom were trying to investigate the origin of the virus? That's point one. And why have 2 citizen journalists who put out videos at the very beginning of this, Fang Bin and Chen Qiushi, why have they disappeared? Where are they?
You should ask why American expel 60 Chinese journalists from United States. And you should ask why we have given more preferential treatment to American journalists. We have been forced to make a countermeasure. There's nothing to do with the COVID-19. As I said, China has been open, transparent.
Okay, well, but Mr. Ambassador, as far as I know, America doesn't imprison journalists. You've imprisoned 48 in the last year, more than any other country. How is that? How is that openness?
No journalist is put into behind the bar because what they are doing as a journalist. People are put behind bar because they are violating the law. Nobody is above law. Everybody is treated equal in front of law. So you can't use journalism as a cover to do something that you violate the law. The answer is simple.
Okay, and you're a country of over 1 billion people, and yet you have less than 5,000, fewer than 5,000 official deaths. To many people, that seems unbelievable. Is it true?
That's because we have adopted most strict, comprehensive, vigorous, rigid measures in contain the virus. So we want to share with this. The Wuhan, the city, which is 5 times of London, with a population 11 million, which is bigger than London plus Northern Ireland. When the town was locked for 76 days, the people made a huge sacrifice. Then the virus, as you said, this virus is about transmission from people to people. So the lockdown has been to be very effective measures. And also we have these effective measures, what we call it 4 earlies: early diagnosis, early treatment, early quarantine, early testing. So all these turn out to be very effective. So you can't blame China for cover up because we have a low number of dead cases.
No, I'm not blaming you, Mr. Ambassador, for anything. I'm just going to make the point, finally, I'm going to ask you, in the UK, we've had over 30,000 deaths, with a much smaller population, obviously. Where do you think Britain went wrong?
I do not want to be critical of UK policy, but what I want to say is we would like to share our experience, compare notes with the British colleagues. I just want to give you the first-hand information. Tomorrow, Secretary Matt Hancock we'll have online meetings together with the British scientists, experts, with the Chinese health minister. It will be more than 2 hours discussions to compare notes, compare experience. I think that is what we need now. We need to enhance collaboration. We have to know this virus is our common enemy. So we need to put together, we should come to the aid to each other to win the final battle. I think as the President Xi said, solidarity, cooperation are the most powerful weapons for international community to beat the COVID-19.
Okay, Mr. Ambassador, I appreciate your time and I look forward to the international investigation whenever it should happen. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening and answering our questions. Thank you.
My pleasure.